just
But it's interesting when we were in these hotels, like these really nice hotels that Federation put us up in, we never really got to see what the hotel looked like because we were so exhausted, but they had synagogues in every of the hotel. Like, so you would get up in the morning and because they set the alarm for 5:45 a.m. And we'd get up in the morning, and you could, if you look in the basement, you would see like a synagogue, a service going on, for like rich business people. So the idea of building, not living above a synagogue, doesn't really exist in hotels. Okay, here it goes. I think it's time to get started here. Let me do a couple of things. You still have the ability to unmute. If you have a big sign on your screen that says "Got it," press "Got it." It'll go away. If you are getting confused by the closed captions subtitles on the bottom of your screen, it might say CC live transcript or just more 3 dots. You click on one of those two and hide subtitle, and it will stop disturbing you. But for those who will appreciate it, it's on. We are recording for those who are in the Hebrew class because you have a final today. Good luck on your Hebrew final today. I've gotten that a couple of people, so good luck. Don't cheat. Okay, so it is 10:02 on July 3rd, so it's not exactly July 4th. It's Independence Day weekend, I guess. I think there was fireworks last night. There's fireworks tomorrow night. Tonight there's music on the lawn at Heartwood Acres. So if you like the heat and humidity, enjoy. So welcome. This is Introduction to Judaism. I think this is our 4th class officially. Last one was a tour of the synagogue where at least 4 of you showed up, so we thank you. Then Pittsburgh now is in the low transmission, even though I think I know more people have COVID now than I did in the high point. So if you got COVID, get that Paxlovid. It's fun. Okay, it makes your mouth taste like Brillo, like you're chewing on a Brillo pad. But it works. Since I am negative now, I still have some sneezes and coughs. So if you hear me sneezing and coughing, I did have COVID a week ago, but I'm doing much better today. And let's see. And if you travel, just expect to get it. I don't know. I know it's not the airplane, but everyone who's travels comes back with it now. Anywhere in the country, by the way. So here it goes. Welcome. Today's topic is the mitzvot. Yeah, like a mitzvah. It's a mitzvah. Mitzvot is the plural of mitzvah. You put an im at the end of a word or an ot at the end of the word, and you've got the plural. The plural of bar mitzvah is not bar mitzvahs. By the way, and some people, they really try, if they know their Hebrew, and say bar mitzvot. That doesn't work either, really. It's actually b'nai mitzvah. But back to mitzvah, the plural of mitzvah is mitzvot. So if you talk about the commandments, the 613 commandments, you may say the 613 mitzvot. And if you ever decide to start a second career and go to rabbi school, which, by the way, now is a good thing to do. For 20 years ago, it was 25 years ago, 30 years ago, it was good to be a rabbi. Yeah. When I graduated from rabbinical school with Amy, 20 of us were looking at 100 jobs. Good time, good market. And then there was a glut of rabbis. So we had like 100 rabbis looking at 20 jobs, but now we're back. It's gone full circle. And now again, there's 20 rabbis looking at 100 jobs. So it's a good time to go to rabbinical school. So go start rabbinical school. And if you don't know an answer on the test, answer this number, 613, 30% chance of being right. Other than 586 BCE is the date you'll just say 586 BCE, 613, or the third answer is before the printing press. And if you answer that in on almost every question, you can get away with those 3 answers. Today is 613. Anyone who was Anyone who was an X-Files fan back in the 80s, the X-Files, every time he woke up, Mulder woke up in the morning, if you looked at his clock, it always said 6:13. Whenever they knocked on someone's door in an apartment building, there was an alien on the other side, but the number was 6:13. So the 6:13 number we love. Hello, Susie, what do you got? Unmute, you can unmute.
Yes, there was also on the show Scandal, if anyone watched Scandal. There was also a 6:13 on Scandal as well. Like they had this like uber, secretive operative group, and it was 613 or 613 or something.
That's so good. Yeah. It is such a popular secret number, right? Madonna, who got into Kabbalah because she's a famous rabbi, she were to fill in, and everyone loves 613, and the rabbis do too. It's not just a bunch of fruitcakes. Whenever you had to do math, I call it rabbi math. Everything has to equal 613. Yeah. If you take the seat number, okay, so you take your seat. Let's see, I'm trying to think. 613. Okay, here, and you wear your tefillin. And so, if you ever took any of my tefillin classes, on tefillin there's a head tefillin and an arm tefillin. On the head tefillin there's a shin, and there are two shins on the head tefillin on two sides of the head tefillin. One side has a 3-armed shin, but the other side has a 4-arm shin, if you look closely. So 4-arm shins are kind of made up. So why do you have these two shins, right? The letter shin. Why do you have these two shins on your thingy here? Let me just help you out there. So what happens is, we have to equal 613, right? So the letter shin, if you go aleph, bet, gimel, dalet, hey, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, every letter has a number, 10, 20, 30, 40, 100, 200, 300. The letter shin is worth 300. It's the second to last letter. Tav is 400. So if you take shin and shin together, that's 600. We're really close now. Then what is the word sheish? Two shins together make the word sheish, which is 6. Now we got 606. So those who are math wizards know that we need 7 more to get 613. The arms of the shins, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 equals 7, 6, 7, 3, 613. And we're wearing the 613 commandments. They can also do that with the knots and the twinings of your seat fringes. Those of us who went to Israel just now, I think, Sybil, are you the only one with me? Marlise has been with me in Israel. But if you see people walking around with fringes coming out of their pants, or you go to Squirrel Hill, either Israel or Squirrel Hill, they say that when you look at that seat, you should think about the 613 commandments. So let's do mitzvah today, the mitzvot. Okay, I said this yesterday in my sermon. I've said this for 20 years. I don't think there's a member of our synagogue who comes to services who doesn't know that mitzvah does not mean good deed. Mitzvah does not mean good deed. Mitzvah means commandments. But most of us growing up thought mitzvah means good deed. Anyone who watches popular television, they'll say, "Oh, I feel like doing a mitzvah today." And actually, that makes no sense in Jewish law. I feel like doing a mitzvah is like saying, "I feel like following the law today." I feel like I won't murder today. It's just, because I'm in a good mood. Right. I don't think you could say, well, I don't follow that law. But so mitzvah, there's one of my teachers, Rabbi Elliot Dorff, wrote a book, Mitzvah Means Commandments, and really drilled it into us day one. Mitzvah means commandments. And so today's topic is the mitzvot, mitzvahs. And there are a lot of mitzvahs. I'll give you a hint. 613 is the tip of the iceberg. There are millions of mitzvahs. All right, so get ready. I'm not going to give them all to you. Actually, there's no end to it. People throw the word mitzvah out, even rabbis do. And someone will say to me, I was visiting some synagogue and their rabbi said, this is a mitzvah. I'm like, well, you could say it's a mitzvah because it protects another mitzvah. Okay, so when we talk about the mitzvot, usually we're talking about the 613. Usually, and the 613 are 613 commandments from the 5 books of Moses, not the entire Bible, not the prophets and writings, just the 5 books of Moses. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, 630 commandments. That's all there are in commandments in the Bible, in the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to jump right to it. I'm going to share a screen because I did this a long time ago, and it's kind of cool. I think it's cool. Okay, here it goes. But I'm a rabbi. It's probably cool for rabbis. Here it goes. Share screen. Let's see your sharing screen. Now participants can see your thingy, and I can see you, and you can see me, and I made it very big, right? So you can see the 630 commandments by Maimonides Encyclopedia Judaica checklist. And you can even see my little pointer moving around, probably choppily, right? Give me a thumbs up. Thank you. Okay, so 630 commandments. So what did I do many, many, many years ago? Someone said to me, Rabbi, you mentioned the 630 commandments every single day of your life. Where are they listed? Well, here's the irony of it all. In the Talmud, it mentions 2,000 years ago, there are 630 commandments. Guess what? The Talmud never lists the 630 commandments. There actually is no list of the 630 commandments. After the Talmud said there's 630 commandments, different rabbis over the centuries wrote different lists of the 630 commandments. They don't agree with each other. Okay? Now, the most popular rabbi in history is Rabbi Maimonides. Okay, he didn't have a synagogue; he was just a famous doctor, and does a lot of things. Not a great husband, but Maimonides makes a list. Rav Kook makes a list. Lots of rabbis make lists, but he's the most authoritative list. And Maimonides writes a list of the 613 commandments. Excuse me, and we can ignore that beeping. And so what does Maimonides do? Maimonides says there's 613 commandments in the 5 books of Moses in the Torah, and he divides them into 248 positive commandments. And by the way, the Talmud mentions this, 248 positive commandments and 365 negative commandments. 365 is easy to remember, right? Someone says to me this morning, they came to Minyan because we need a Minyan on Sunday mornings and we have trouble making Minyan on Sunday morning. And they're like, it's so nice to have a Minyan on Sunday morning. I said, I want to guarantee we have a Minyan 365 days a year. So it's easy to remember the number 365 because it's the days of the year. And then you just take 613 minus 365 and you'll get 248. Now, that's not a number that you should just remember off the top of your head, 248, unless you 2 and then you times it by 2 and then okay, fine. But 248, the rabbis in the Talmud thought that, and doctors, I know it's wrong. Don't worry, I know it's wrong. The rabbis thought that there were 248 bones in the body. Someone told me there's like 248 bones in the hand. Like there's a lot of bones, but don't, or then they said appendages. I don't know. It's rabbi science. Okay. I've told you rabbi math. Rabbi science says there are 248 bones in the body. And I know it's not true. All right. So, I've had doctors try to figure out what the 248 is. They weren't doctors, these rabbis, but they thought that when you follow the commandments, you find the commandments with every bone of your body, every day of the year, 248 and 365. And if you can't remember which is bigger, the negative or the positive, just don't forget, you're Jewish. If you're Jewish, there's always more negative than positive, right? So 365 negative, 248 positive. And yet, and by the way, I talk incessantly. I can't see all of you right now because I'm on a share screen. If you want to add something, just unmute yourself and talk. If you unmute yourself by accident, we'll hear you and I'll mute you. But I won't be able to see you right now. By the way, so when I teach my Catholic school, I said, how many commandments are there? My Catholic students, they'll say 10. I go, according to you, according to us, we have 613. And they go, oh my God, 613 commandments. That sounds horrible. I go, well, it's actually pretty good. I said, when you have 10 commandments and you miss 3 of them, you get a 70%. That's a really bad grade. Your parents, your Jewish parents, will be very mad at you for 70%, unless you're my kid. I'm like, oh, thank God you got 70. But a 70%, you miss 3 commandments out of 10, you got a 70%. But what happens when you miss 3 commandments out of 613? You still got a great grade. So I could look at the commandments as, and this is, my, touchy-feely, liberal, fluffy view of Judaism. I look at 613 commandments as 613 ways to connect to God. Right? I like, why do I keep kosher? Not because God will strike me with lightning if I eat a cheeseburger. I keep kosher because it's one way I can connect to God. It reminds me, it keeps me balanced. If I only had 10 ways to connect to God, that would make my life much harder. By the way, we're about to look at this list. I'm going to scroll through. Most commandments you can't do because you're either a man or a woman, but you're probably not a king or a prophet or a scribe or living in Israel, or we have no temple to do sacrifices. So what I did with this list, so right here, I took out of the Encyclopedia Judaica, and then what I did was I created this like test, yes, no, not applicable. This is, by the way, on our website. If I'm sharing my screen, you probably even can see where it comes from. It's from bethelcon.org, and it's under Rabbi Alex's archive. It's actually on our website if you actually want to see this or print it up. It is, I don't know, a lot of pages. It's 20 pages long. So, and it goes like this. I made it into a test. I've never taken the test, by the way, but you could say in each commandment, okay, number 1, God. The Jew is required to, number 1, believe that God exists. That's Maimonides' number 1 commandment. Just because he does it topically, that's not the first one mentioned. So, okay, fine, maybe I believe in God. But what if I don't believe in God, right? Someone says to me, Rabbi, I don't believe in God. That's fine. You still have 612 more commandments to go. That's the Jewish answer. The Jewish answer is you can not believe in God and still be Jewish. You can not believe in God and still be a good Jew. You still have a lot more commandments that are past number 1. Okay, so what are these numbers? Do you see my little 1s and 2s and 3s and 4s and 5s and 6? And yes, I made it into a test. You don't have to take the test right now. On the bottom of each page, I actually wrote the verses, right? So that first commandment would be from Exodus 20, verse 2. And it says, and by the way, if you actually looked at each of these verses, you would say some of it just doesn't line up because some of them are a stretch. Like, how did they get that one? But you'll notice Exodus, most of them come from Deuteronomy. I'm just going to show you the first, what are we going to get in the screen? Verse 22. No, just look at this verse 22. Most of them are from Deuteronomy, okay? And then just a smattering are from like Exodus, Leviticus. There's like none in Genesis, okay? And then I'm just going to go here. Let me show you some of the topics. Okay, so what does Maimonides do? Maimonides puts it in topical, God, like, it makes it easy to find, by the way. I've used this before. Someone says, where is the commandment to blah? And I'm like, is that a positive or negative? Positive, by the way, means do something. Negative means don't do something. It's not because we don't like it. It's do not murder. That's a negative commandment. You might say that's pretty positive, but do not murder. By the way, I never told you my punchline with my Catholic students. So I told them, when I teach that there's 613 commandments and there's 365 negative commandments and 248 positive commandments, guess what? You actually wish there were more negative commandments, because when you go to sleep at night, for those of us who sleep, when you go to sleep at night, you're following 365 commandments. You're not murdering anyone, and you're not, eating anything bad. It's when you're awake is the problem. When you're awake, there's 248 positive commandments, and no matter what commandment you're following, let's say we're studying Torah right now, you're still not visiting the sick. But if you're visiting the sick, you're probably not comforting the mourner. If you're covering the mortar, you're probably not feeding the hungry. You can never be perfect. And by the way, if you answered, say you took the test and you've got 613 out of 613, which is actually humanly impossible, that doesn't mean you're finished. It's every day of your life too, right? It's not like you had a really good day and you followed 613 commandments, and tomorrow you can break 12 of them. Yeah, so here's the commandments. So God, Torah, temple and priest, that's a much harder one to follow nowadays. Oh, by the way, what did the rabbis do 2,000 years ago when the temple was destroyed? They said, since we don't have a holy temple anymore, when you pray the Amidah in services, you are fulfilling all the temple sacrifice mitzvahs. By praying 3 times a day, we're fulfilling the mitzvahs of sacrifice 3 times a day. So it's a cheating way. Temple and priests. What's another one? Sacrifices, hard to do. Okay, blah, 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 lots of sacrifices. A lot of Leviticus there. Okay, blah, blah, blah. Vows, a Nazarite, you're not a Nazarite. Okay, ritual purity. Okay, lots of drippings, donations to the temple. That's the holy temple, but you can still give money to the synagogue. The sabbatical year, the sabbatical year, can you see me highlighting? Okay. The sabbatical year is interesting. We were just in Israel. Now, our tour guide, don't get me started, but our tour guide was a wonderful, zealot settler who was living in, disputed territories. And so she had other points. But as we were driving, I was fascinated by all the farms that we were passing that said in Hebrew, Shemitah is observed. This is the Shemitah year right now. This is the 7th year, the Shemitah year, where everything that grows is ownerless and available to all. The fields must lay fallow, and you must not till the ground. Well, I go to my tour guide, who did not like me, but well-deserved. I'm a troublemaker. And plus, when she said, you're skipping the marketplace, that's when Amy said, that's it, we're going shopping. And she's like, no, you're not. And Amy goes, we're adults, and walks away. And all the other children were stuck on the bus and then punished the next day. We had to get up 30 minutes earlier. So, because it was collective punishment. Okay, don't get me started. The sabbatical year. So this is the sabbatical year of Israel, all right, right now. And they would have these big signs saying, Shemitah is observed at this field, which I felt was just a way of saying, shop from me and not from the guy next door. But I went to my tour guide, who's very knowledgeable, and I said, how do they survive? Right? How do you survive if you're a farmer and Shemitah is observed? She goes, oh, they just sell their farm for the year to someone else, kind of like when we sell hummus. And I'm like, oh. And she said, and by the way, everyone does it, because if you don't do it, you can't sell to the stores. They only buy kosher food, and they won't consider Shemitah. If you don't follow the Shemitah laws in Israel, no store will buy your food. So everyone does Shemitah, but it's not as, and I thought, wow, it looks fallow. I mean, it looks like it's just lying fallow. And they go, no, they just harvested it like the week before. It was, remember, we just got there after Shavuot, after the harvest, which is kind of, I thought was neat, but she didn't think it was neat, so she never told the bus. But I thought it was really cool. So the sabbatical year is followed in Israel. Okay, blah, blah, blah. Concerning animals for consumption, blah, blah, blah. Festivals, we do a lot of those things still. Okay, community, okay, idolatry. We got a class coming up, great questions. What's so bad about idolatry? War, social, blah, 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 family. And we're almost done because it's 221. Okay, judicial, slaves. We don't have slaves anymore, thank God. Torts, and that's 248. Rescue the persecuted, even if it means killing his or her oppressor, 248, which comes from Deuteronomy 25:12. It's not in order, okay, the order. Then there are 365 negative commandments. Do not do this. Fine, okay. Idolatry and related practices, okay. Don't worship idols, good. Okay, do we worship our cell phones? Prohibition resulting from historical events, good, good, good. Okay. Blasphemy, temple, blah, blah, blah. Sacrifices, lots of sacrifices, lots of sacrifices, lots of sacrifices. Priests, you're not a priest. Dietary laws. I mean, you could be a Cohen. All right. Dietary laws, don't eat worms. Okay, good. Nazarites, don't be a Nazarite. Agriculture, okay. Loans, businesses, and treatment of slaves, good. These are the don'ts. Okay, come on, we're almost done. Justice, la, 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 la. Yeah. Incest, good. Don't have incest, that's a good thing. Monarchy, if you're a king, you have laws, 365. By the way, this is not the order of it, but the last mitzvah, I'm going to stop sharing. The last mitzvah in the Torah, in the 5 books of Moses. I don't know if anyone remembers this when we were building our new inclusion Torah, fulfill the final 613th commandment. The last commandment in the Torah is right close to the end. If you know your Torah, Ha'azinu, when Moses writes the final poem to the Israelites, there's a poem, Ha'azinu is written like a poem in the Torah. And then it says that everyone, or it says something about everyone should write a Torah for themselves. And obviously we don't write our own Torah, but by making a Torah, by buying a Torah for the synagogue, we fulfilled the 613th commandment. By the way, the first commandment, number 1 commandment, Genesis, Adam and Eve, be fruitful and multiply. We're going to say that, Harvey? Okay, let me get to you, Harvey.
I was going to say that. How come no one listed that as the first commandment? And I also looked at your list as you went down, your references. You were moving pretty fast, and maybe I didn't see any Genesis quotes. They all seem to be Leviticus.
So if I go here, let me see. So be fruitful, multiply. So that is a positive commandment, right? Not God, not Torah sacrifice. Let's see if I can give you. Okay, this vows, ritual purity, donations to the temple, sabbatical year, concerning festivals, just community. Every male should give myrrh. Okay, idolatry. Wasn't there a family in war? Social family. Fear your parents, blah, blah, blah. You should perpetuate. Okay, here it goes. Let me see if I can find you a Genesis line. Okay, I found it. Here, I'm going to show it to you. I'm going to share it with you just real quick. Well, 2:15, right? No, that's just the circumcision one. No. Oh, no, there it is. I got it. Okay. I'm going to show it to you just once. Okay. Since you're a good student and you want to see it. Here we go. Share. You are screen sharing. I am.
See it. Yeah.
Okay. So here it goes. It's 2:12. Where is it? 2:12. Okay. So Maimonides says, commandment 212 is one should perpetuate the human race by marrying. Now, it doesn't actually say that. It says be fruitful and multiply. You can do that without marrying. But here it goes. Let me explain how it works. Okay. And if I go down here, Genesis 1:28, the first commandment. But you are correct, Harvey. Rabbi Schiff taught a class on commandments years ago and said there's only 2 commandments that are like in Genesis, and all the rest come from other places. Now, I'm going to disagree with myself in a moment, stop share, and tell you a little more. One of the ways I explain the 613 commandments is this. Oh, and so, the first commandment, and again, these commandments are not in order. They're about, of the Torah, they're in order of topics. First commandment, be fruitful, multiply. Last commandment, make yourself a Torah. If I was going to simplify what a commandment is, a mitzvah is, whenever God says something to someone to do something in the Torah, it's a commandment. If God tells Adam and Eve or Abraham or Moses or the Israelites to do something, God doesn't have to say, I command you to do it. By the way, the 10 commandments, right? You know the 10 commandments, or some of them, but the 10 commandments, the word commandment is actually never used in the 10 commandments. The commandment is used throughout the Torah, not all the time, not 613 times, but God will say, I command you to do something. The funny thing about the 10 commandments is that's not even listed as a commandment. They're 10 Devarim, 10 things, 10 statements. So the funny thing is, now, God says a lot more than 613 things in the 5 books of Moses. God says to Abraham, do whatever your wife says. I still think that's a commandment. Do whatever your wife tells you is still a commandment. Even though it's not listed in Maimonides' 613 commandments. But that's kind of an easy way of explaining the 613 commandments is God doesn't need to emphasize God. God is God, so we have to take God seriously. So if God says something to someone, we take it seriously, and it gets written down in the list of 613 commandments. Okay, so that is 30 minutes on the list of the 630 commandments. You can pull it up on our website at another time. You can print it up and take a test and tell me your score. I think that's so cute. Okay, but I don't have the patience for it. And it goes like this. The 613 commandments can be broken up in different categories, positive and negative. We just killed that horse, right? 365 and 248. But they can also be, every single commandment is either person to person or person to God. All right. Every single commandment is either people to people or people to God. People to people, murder, kidnap, lie, steal, right? That's when there's a victim. And then there's victimless crimes, cheeseburgers, right? Praying, right? So those are us and God. And so there, by the way, I've never seen a list. No, I've never seen like the numbers. I've looked this up for 50 years, but the idea of how many of each, but let's just say that if you took all 613 commandments, they can either go to one of those two categories. Why is that important? Because of Yom Kippur. Once upon a time, we used to go to services. There was a time when people used to come to services and come into the building and pray. It was a long time ago. And when you would come to services, you would stand up and hit yourself. You're praying a lot and you're hitting yourself a lot. And what are you saying? Forgive us for this and forgive us for that. It's the day of forgiveness, the day of atonement. Rabbi Amy, she loves to knock on people's doors and say, will you forgive me for something? Because it's the high holidays. It's the days of awe, right? Every year, Amy says to me, Alex, will you forgive me for anything I did to you, whether on purpose? She has a whole formula. And I'm like, let me think about it. And then usually 3 days later, I'm like, fine, I'll accept your, apology for all the things you've done to me. Then she's like, do you have anything to say to me? I'm like, no, nah. This has been going on for 28 years. So it's working so far. So, but I hear there's a nice place waiting for me, after when this is all said and done. I'm going to take over. Okay. So, Dante. Okay. So, Yom Kippur comes along and says day of forgiveness, right? So you've heard this before. I can't go on Yom Kippur and say, God, forgive me for embarrassing Amy publicly. Forgive me for stealing and all the other stuff I do against people. God will not forgive people for sins against people unless you atone to the person and then you can go to God. So Yom Kippur only fixes sins against God. God, forgive me for eating that cheeseburger. God, forgive me for taking a second one. God, So you're on Yom Kippur only fixes sins against God. Now, yes, it fixes sins against people after you went to the person. So if I offend Bob, I'm gonna make up a name, Bob Goldberg. I don't know a Bob Goldberg, but everyone thinks they know a Bob Goldberg. You all think you know a Bob Goldberg, but you might not. So actually Jeff Goldberg. No, that's the name I like the most. I one time I did a research on the most popular Jew names. Jeff was the most popular first name. Gold was the first and last name, and Berg. So I made up a Jeff Goldberg. Never met a Jeff Goldberg in my life. But I tell everyone, I go, have you met Jeff Goldberg? And they all think they have. All right. Yeah, but I've never met a Jeff Goldberg. So Jeff Goldberg, I offend, I apologize. And then I could go to Yom Kippur and say, forgive me for hurting Jeff. If I went to Jeff already, then Yom Kippur counts. So that's why Yom Kippur and the 613 commandments is important in that If it sins against God, you're good. If it sins against people, you're not good until you go to the person. That's for forgiveness class. Next one. Okay, sorry. Does that count? All right. All right. So Amy's like, you should ask for forgiveness. So she's home. Okay, but the puppy is quiet. Anyone go to service yesterday when Cliff's dog starts barking during Torah, sir? He's reading a Torah reading, and the dog has this thing. Like our dog, whenever we kiss, the dog goes crazy. She wants to be kissed too. That's our dog's thing. His dog is whenever they sing, like they practice singing with guitars at their house because they're like guitar playing people, the dog goes crazy whenever someone sings. So the guy's reading Torah yesterday in services online. It's not like you can mute the dog, and the dog's going crazy, but only when he sings, not when he was talking. Only when he sings does the dog go crazy. So it was a fun day on the internet yesterday. Okay, so here is one of my favorite commandment categories. We know there's 613 commandments. You know you can divide them into positive and negative, and you also know you can divide them in people and people and people and God. Here's another one. Jeff Goldberg is Gordon's son-in-law. So there is a Jeff Goldberg. You know of one, Carol. Thank you. Carol knows of a Jeff Goldberg. See, I made up the name, but it always works. Everyone, whether you know one or you think you know one, it sounds so Jewish, right? Jeff Goldberg. All right. Now they name their kids like Madison with a Y, but it's like us with Miles. All right. But Jeff Goldberg was definitely the most popular name I could think of as Jewish. Okay. Here's my favorite category: reasons for mitzvot. If a commandment makes sense or a commandment doesn't make sense. Every commandment either makes sense or doesn't make sense. Another way to put it is they're either traditional or rational, right? How many Jews do you know say, I'll follow this commandment because it makes sense, but I won't follow this commandment because it makes no sense, right? So, I'll do this and this and this, but that one makes no sense, right? It's usually keeping kosher, and, that's who wants to keep kosher. So, that makes no sense. That was for health reasons. I'm not going to follow that. Oh, but, murder, I guess I won't murder, and it's, and I don't know why you like lighting Shabbat candles. Makes no sense. That's actually, it doesn't make the world a better place either, but you like to light Shabbat candles. It's only once a week. You don't have to keep kosher. So every commandment is either rational or traditional. And it's interesting. I usually explain to people attack me on rational traditional. I said, the rational commandments, out of 613 commandments, a lot of them you would do anyway. I don't know if you ever read de Tocqueville's, if you're a social science kind of person, the social contract. You drop a bunch of babies off on a island and they raise themselves and they create a society, a civilization. They eventually would come up with laws. There's a theory that humans will come up with laws, whether you teach them or not. Eventually, you're going to learn don't kill each other or don't steal from each other, because eventually you're going to figure out that you need that. That's what keeps society together. But you're never going to light Shabbat candles. You're never going to start lighting Shabbat candles just for the fun of it. That's not rational. It doesn't make the world a better place. Obviously, lighting candles once upon a time was so you can see at night, but we won't get into that. That's under Shabbat. So reasons for the mitzvot, what I usually explain is the 613 commandments, the rational ones, you are going to do anyway. That's what makes you a good human. Out of 613 commandments, there are some commandments like respect your elders and, take care of the sick, you would do anyway because you're a good human being. It's the ones that make no sense that make you a good Jew. Right? That's the Jewish ones. The Jewish ones are the ones that make no sense. Why do I follow something that makes no sense? Because that's what makes me Jewish. The other ones don't make me Jewish. They make me a good human. Right. And I couldn't drop out of Judaism and then start murdering people and say, well, I don't follow that law. It's there's a lot of laws that do kind of go back and work for both of us. So reasons for the mitzvot is a great category. Okay, so the number 613. Okay, let me just get my Norden away from here. Okay, so I just said 613. Have you, okay, I'm gonna ask you a word, and I hope you know none of you have heard this word before, unless you took a class with me once. Have you ever heard the word taryag? I'm gonna put it into the chat box here. Give me a second. Taryag. There, taryag. Okay, please say no. If you have, you're cheaters. Okay, taryag. So in this book, the book I'm teaching from, it's getting a little ratty, but in this book, it says taryag. Taryag is 613. Remember that whole 400 and 610, the three? The T is the top, 400. And then, taryag, resh is 200. Yud, Ya is 10, and Gimel's. Taryag is just a way of saying 613. It's funny. When someone said to me, or the book says, we follow the taryag, I've never used that term in 50, I don't know how old I am, 52 years. In 52 years, I've never used the word taryag. But what's interesting is Israelis know that word. They're like, oh, the taryag. I'm like, what the heck is a taryag? And it sounds like a Pokemon monster. The taryag is 613. That's just what it is. Okay, the 600. It's another way of saying the 613, which no Jew I know says it, or rabbi, or yeshiva, but Israelis seem to know that. So just in case you ever get caught. Okay. I have been focusing on the 613 commandments. But guess what? There are millions of commandments because, by the way, one of the 613 commandments is do not add to my commandments. God says, do not add or subtract from my commandments. So what do we do with that? We added a lot of commandments. All right. And so the rabbis wouldn't say we added to the commandments. We're just protecting the 613. Those 613 commandments come from God. We better be careful. So if God says something, we got to be really careful not to break that something. Shabbat is not, Shabbat is a 24-hour period, right? Shabbat is a day. But what do? We add like an hour before, an hour after. It's like 25 hours and 18 minutes, right? Because God forbid you do something on Shabbat. So we add buffer zones, right? Before and after Shabbat. So when you start Shabbat, it's bright as day out. You can see the sun. When you're lighting the Shabbat candles, you can still see the sun. And when is Shabbat over? It's been dark for a long time and it's 3 stars out. Because what did the rabbis do? The rabbis added a fence. We're going to call it a fence. In Hebrew, it's called a siyag, a fence around the laws. So the Talmud comes around 2,000 years ago and makes up a lot of laws. And they're still going today. When a pandemic hits, how am I going to have a minyan on Zoom? You know what? The Torah never mentions Zoom. Neither does the Talmud. By the way, the Talmud does mention a pandemic, but does not. Yeah, and we have had pandemics before, but we're constantly making commandments, but the commandments are based on the 613, and so the argument is that we didn't add 1,000 or 2,000 or 1,000,000 commandments. We were just protecting the original 613. So, for example, the one I usually say to people is, if God said, don't touch this book, and this book is lying on my desk, all right? So now this book is lying on my desk, okay? What would the rabbi say? Don't touch anything on this desk. God said only don't touch his book, but the rabbis say don't touch anything on this, because if I touch anything on this desk, I might by accident move that book or touch that book. So, and we're so afraid of breaking God's law, we make a very big fence. Meet a Jew, an Orthodox Jew. Can you ride a horse on Shabbat? You can't ride a horse on Shabbat. Why can't you ride a horse on Shabbat? It is not one of the 613 commandments. You can go back into my list. You're never going to find do not ride a horse on Shabbat. But if you ride a horse on Shabbat, you may ride a horse by a tree and break off the stick off the tree to hit the horse to go faster. And the breaking the stick off the tree breaks Shabbat, which breaks the 39 categories of Shabbat. Therefore, you can't ride a horse on Shabbat. So we were having an EKC retreat many years ago. It was great with Bethel. We went to EKC. EKC calls me up and says, Rabbi, do you allow horseback riding on Shabbat? I said, You're horseback riding. Is it just you take that horse and you go around in a circle in that field like 25 times, which is very boring. And they go, yeah. I go, do they go by trees do they go by trees and break sticks off to hit the horses to go faster? They go, Rabbi, what are you talking about? You're not allowed to hit a horse. We don't go by trees. We got liability. And I go, then I allow horseback riding because the 613 laws never say, so this is a major difference between conservative and Orthodox. Orthodox say, if it possibly could lead to the breaking of the law, you can't do it. The conservative says, don't break the law, but maybe you can do the things around it if you're careful. That's why we're messier. That's why we read labels on a food thingy, right? We read food labels, right? They just have to look for an OU and they're done. They can go to sleep. You get like a Smart One frozen dinner, and it's got 7,000 ingredients because that's so healthy for you. And you got to make sure that every little ingredient and like they sneak in that chicken fat in your Lay's baked potato chips. You don't even see it coming in your Lay's baked potato chips, chicken fat. Surprise. All right. So, and most Lay's are kosher. So we have to read the ingredients. So rabbinic commandments never end. They never end. We're constantly making rabbinic commandments. The conservative movement makes rabbinic commandments, but so does everyone. What is the breaking of the branch or the hitting of the horse that is breaking the law? So on Shabbat, there are 39 categories of work, which the rabbis made up too. And one of those categories of work is to pull up, to uproot, to plant or unplant. It's actually the plant or unplanting of on Shabbat. You're not allowed to plant on Shabbat, even though I know it's the best day to do gardening. I do know that. I know the best day to do your painting and lawn is on Shabbat. I know that, but the rabbis don't like that. So the 2,000 years ago, 39 categories of work. One is planting and also the opposite of planting. And the opposite of planting is uprooting. And the pulling a stick off a tree is uprooting. Miles, so my Miles, he's my mini me, so he's horrible. So Miles one day is mad. He's always mad. We made him share the ball into the playground. This is a true story. He's got a ball. Everyone's playing with the ball. He takes the ball and then runs away with the ball from everyone else. So we're like, you have to share the ball. And then of course he doesn't listen. We take the ball from him and give it to the other kids. He sits down. He starts pulling grass up. We go, what are you doing? He's like, I'm destroying God's world. He's like 5 years old at the time, but we did take him to see a doctor to see if there's something wrong with him. Turns out nothing that you can fix. That's a true story. But yeah, uprooting. So the breaking of the stick off. By the way, here's another one about Shabbat. If you ask an Orthodox Jew, can you swim on Shabbat? Most Orthodox Jews will say no. Now they think, but it's not listed in the 39 categories of work. Why? What's the original reason? You may go swimming and create a flotation device. The creation of the flotation device, this is true. The creation of the flotation device breaks Jewish law. I agree with that. You start using a lathe on Shabbat, you're probably breaking Shabbat. But I allow swimming on Shabbat because you're probably not going to create it. I usually say, so the EKC says, do you allow swimming on Shabbat? As long as you don't allow anyone to create a flotation device. That's my rule. So yesterday in services, I touched on this for a moment. Not because I knew this class was coming, by the way. It was just, I didn't want to talk about Korach for the 100th time in 20 years. You poor people have heard the same sermons for 20 years. I don't know how you do it. Okay. But luckily, Sue Ellen, I think, is the only one who seems to have them memorized. She's always like, Rabbi, 16 years ago, you mentioned that. I'm like, God bless you, Sue Ellen. I don't think anyone else remembers, including me. So here it goes. I said, one of the things I said about mitzvahs yesterday is that doing the mitzvah is the mitzvah, right? I did it. I was in services once. I was at a Shiva service. I wasn't leading it. It was actually another rabbi's leading this Shiva service. And I'm in the back of the room because I'm hiding, and everyone's mumbling, right? That's what we do in weekday services, right? It's mumble, 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 mumble out loud, mumble, 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 watermelon. And so this non-Jewish person says, what's the point of this? Yeah, they were very confused by it. And they knew I was a rabbi. So like, what's the point of this mumbling, this davening? And I said, for a lot of people, we pray because we're supposed to pray, not because we weren't commanded to like enjoy it. We are commanded to pray 3 times a day. So for many people, the daily millionaires, and it's very hard to sometimes just buy into this, what I'm saying. Those of us who grew up davening, me, Alan Wolstein, a few of us grew up davening, Gene Tomachnik or something, we would say, you pray 3 times a day, whether you like it or not, you drop what you're doing. Think of the Muslims who drop what they're doing for 5 minutes and pray, and you do your thing, and then you go back to your life. We don't look, we're not looking for a hole-in-one every time we play golf. We're looking at, every now and then it might have meaning, but mostly we're doing it because we're supposed to do it. It's a commandment. So when it comes to commandments, yes, doing it is better than not doing it. It's not the thought that counts, right? My wife meets me. She can't hear me right now. So my wife meets me 30 years ago. And she's like, she comes home one day. We're living in Los Angeles at the time. She's like, I was thinking of getting you this. And like she passed some store that she knew I liked, and she thought about getting me something. That's what she told me. I thought about getting you something. I said, why would you tell me that? She's like, I just want to let you know I was thinking about you. I go, but you didn't get me anything. It's not the thought that counts. In Judaism, it's not the thought that counts. If you do it, then it counts, but it doesn't count that you thought about doing something. That's, I think she came from a different background than I did. I came from a Jewish background, and my background was, that doesn't count for anything. I thought about picking you up something nice, but I didn't. So Judaism is not, it's the thought that counts. It completely not the thought that counts. And yet, let me fix it. Yes, you have commandments you need to do and you're supposed to do and, go through the motions. However, we are also supposed to adorn the mitzvah, make it beautiful. I can put a sukkah up, throw it together. I can throw a menorah together. But there's also another commandment that says I should make it beautiful. When I make a sukkah, I fulfill a commandment. When I make it beautiful, I fulfill another commandment. When I light a menorah, I fulfill a commandment. When I make it a beautiful menorah, I fulfill another commandment. So you cannot, So what I explain is, yes, doing the commandment is better than not doing the commandment. Doing the commandment beautifully is another commandment. You're getting 2 for the price of 1. And therefore, there are commandments to make your prayers beautiful. If you're talking about prayers or tallis, you can have the coffee stained tallises in our shelves, but if you buy a tallis, and I'm not looking for your money, but our gift shop is open. But the idea is you're supposed to you are commanded to make your commandment beautiful. But if you don't make your commandment beautiful, you still fulfilled a commandment. You just didn't get your second part of your commandment. What's another one? Joy. You are commanded to enjoy the commandment. Now, I am pretty sure there's not everyone who's sitting in services going, God, this is the greatest day of my life. I'm so enjoyful. True story. I don't know if, most of you don't remember this because you weren't coming to services 20 years ago. But 20 years ago, I take over and, not everyone likes me. I know. Stop. You don't believe this. I'm not for everyone. Okay, 20 years later, you're either still here or you're probably not here. But 20 years ago, that room was filled with a lot of people who didn't want me because it was 20 years ago. So I'm doing services, true story. I'm doing services and I see a bunch of people like just shaking their head no at me, growling, really hating me. And I'm like, I stopped services and I said, listen, people, you are commanded to enjoy. Yes, you're here and making a minion. Thank you. But and there's no Zoom, by the way, back then. But you're also commanded to enjoy it. And if you're not enjoying services, there's probably a lot of services you would enjoy more. And so one person comes up and goes, did you just tell me to leave? And I'm like, no, I'm telling you, you should enjoy yourself. But I want you to be happy. It's I'm not going to change. So, but what they're looking for is like every other place in the city had that, because so, if you're looking for, decorum, decorum. I hate that word. Okay, so quiet, no children. Okay, so you are commanded to enjoy the mitzvah. Now, if you don't enjoy the mitzvah, you still get your mitzvah point for doing the mitzvah. But if you enjoy it, you get another mitzvah point. All right, so you are commanded to make it pretty. You are commanded to enjoy it. It doesn't take away the first mitzvah. And then intention, you could... you're supposed to intend to do the mitzvah. There are many things we do unintentionally. We just were going through the motions maybe, or we didn't even think we did it. You can save someone's life by accident. There's a cute little commercial on like some phone where when you buy a phone, you get another one, whether you like it or not. And so the person's like, I'm generous. And then like in the background is like, by accident, like so it was like this commercial about that I feel so good about myself because I'm giving my wife another phone by accident. So the idea is intention. You should have intention. You should have that's a big word for the young people. The 20-year-old, the millennials. Now they're 30. But like intentionality. We should be intentional about our actions. And yes. When it comes to commandments, we should be intentional. We should want to do it, and we should think about doing it, and we should do it with intention. But if we don't do it with intention, right? I'm just going like, I don't know, I'm on autopilot. I still get mitzvah points, but you get more mitzvah points if you make it beautiful, if you enjoy it, if you make it intentional. And so there are levels. It's kind of like the Star Wars, the original Star Wars, not the 17,000 episodes since then, but the original Star Wars in 1976, where they had the chessboard that was like a 3D in different levels. Mitzvahs are kind of like the same thing. Like there's different layers to the mitzvah. It's like an onion. So we should intend to do it as well. It should be intentional. And so therefore, there are a lot of commandments. Rabbis constantly are making commandments. Rabbis disagree on commandments. After we talked about this in the Bible, actually, it might be coming up. It's coming up in a couple chapters. I think we actually hit this one about what happens when the Bible's over and the Talmud's over. How do we get more commandments? Gambling, electricity, electric menorah, and we'll talk about that another time. So. Though that is our mitzvah chapter. If you want to go on bethelcon.org and see the 613 commandments for yourself from Maimonides, do not let Encyclopedia Judaica know that we stole it 30 years ago because it was before the internet. I just had it on paper. Our next class, okay, let me see if I can pull it up. When's our next intro? I'm pulling up my calendar. Wait, I'm in Amy's look. Okay, calendar. We're probably back on schedule. This is July. Oh, but this one didn't count as July. So it might be, no, I'm going to find it. Oh, I have to move it. Never mind. I don't know. I don't know officially. Huh. Oh, no, there's a Boomers event that day. Okay. I don't know when the next intro class is because it's Harrison's white coat ceremony. I don't like smart kids. All right, so yeah, I know. Yeah, I love to take credit for it, but I always told him, aim less, aim lower. He goes. I'm like, stop working so hard. Yeah, he takes after his mother. Okay, Carol, what do you got?
Well, I was just going to say we're having the blood drive that day.
Okay. Oh, on which day? The 24th?
Yes.
Okay, good. I won't be competing against the blood drive, and I won't be competing against Boomers. We'll find a time for intro. This one actually counts as last week's intro because it was actually scheduled for last week, but we had a great event instead. I had COVID, so I was hiding. But it's except for when I took the microphone. But I was not contagious anymore. So if you got COVID, feel better. If you are going outside, stay cool. I think it's hot and humid. What do you got, Neil? What's other announcements?
Oh, so this Thursday coming up, you have the 9 Jews.
No, this Thursday I got great questions. Gender fluidity.
Oh yeah, that's okay. So this Thursday is our first great questions, which God, we picked some good great questions for this time.
I am not an expert on that yet. I will be by that night, but I'm excited about topics I've never gone near because I'd be crazy to do, but that's what Neil does to me. Take a topic you can only get murdered on. Okay.
Yeah, so we're doing how many genders are there in Judaism this Thursday?
Right. That and one, there is answers. I just disagree with that one, but we'll do that one.
Then the next great questions will be, is it okay to overthrow the government?
Okay, great. Yeah, I don't even know if I want to record that one, but go on. Yeah.
And the last one is, why can't we worship pagan gods?
What's so bad about idolatry? Yeah.
So we got those 3 great questions in the next several months. Next, not this Monday, but next Monday, we got the beginning of our 4-part series with the Israeli consulate on Israel's military history. So we're doing a war a week, the War of Independence, the Suez Crisis, 6-Day War, Yom Kippur War. On July 20th, we are going to Woodville Plantation, which I just got to tell you, my kids loved it. So you got grandchildren.
Sheila's shaking her head yes on that one.
Bring your kids, your grandchildren. They'll just love running around there. We're in the barn, so it doesn't matter if it rains. We are bringing snacks and beverages, but if you want to bring a dinner with you as well, as long as it's kosher, dairy kosher, there'll be a place to eat. There'll be napkins, again, food and snacks. So I think that's going to be a really fun event. And again, it's not like you're going to be sitting out baking in the sun. But I really.
And that was RSVP, Neil, by the 12th, I think it was moved to, something like that.
So hurry up and RSVP. I think hopefully I figured out how to RSVP. I did it when I was away. There's something, so I mean, what's really interesting is not many people really appreciate that the area we live in had such an impact on American history, because it was the first rebellion in American history, literally took place all around us. And the Allegheny Mountains were on the verge of seceding from the United States. So there's a lot of really interesting stuff. And I remember my kids when they were younger really enjoyed it.
Neil, I'm still thinking about seceding for the United States.
Bad idea. Although I have heard more about that from my wife, and how to replace the Supreme Court at all. So
we have to have our own.
Yeah.
It's all RBG's fault.
We can create a Talmudic state in the Allegheny Mountains. All righty. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of neat stuff coming up in the near future. I guess that's everything. I'll see everybody on Thursday. Au revoir. Take care.
Rabbi.
Yeah, Harvey.
I was going to ask you before, do you know when tefillin came into existence and how they came up with the way they made it? Who would have ever thought to make it the way they look?
So the Talmud mentions tefillin. The Shulchan Aruch 500 years ago really describes every little nitty gritty on how to make it, the leather, the writing, and all that other good stuff. So I would say that 2,000 years ago, everyone's doing it their own way. Rashi and Rabbeinu Tam had different tefillin, and today there's actually people who wear 2 different tefillins because they disagreed. But by 500 years ago, there's like a one way to make tefillin kind of thing. So, but I don't believe that anyone creates law. I think law is kind of written because people are doing it already. So I think it's pre 500 years ago. I'm going to say probably more between 200 and 500, between 500 and 1800 years ago. Yeah, but it is mentioned in the Talmud. Certainly the Torah doesn't tell you to make it, Harvey.
That's a long time
It is a
After
long
the-
time.
After the desert, there were a lot of years till 500.
Moses is not wearing tefillin. It's Maimonides. I'm not even so sure, you know.
Jesus
Definitely a
didn't,
diaspora thing.
Yeah,
Jesus
Jesus
did not wear tefillin then.
Jesus did not wear tefillin, and Jesus probably didn't wear a kippah either. Kippahs are a more modern thing too. Moses didn't wear a kippah either, but yes, no tefillin. Yeah, I think maybe Mel Gibson put tefillin on Jesus, but I'm pretty sure that's not correct. Yeah. All right. Okay, I gotta go to
Okay.
the next thing, but you guys are
Thank
wonderful.
you.
Thank
Thank